That's a question so many people are asking themselves. If I'm not willing to risk a rubber bullet or tear gas, if I'm not out there on the front line, am I not really an ally? And again, I'm going to start by just reiterating, I'm going to answer this from my point of view, from my perspective. It's not the end-all, know-all answer. But if you ask me, do you need to be on the front line, willing to die to be an ally? My answer to you is no. You do not need to be willing to go to the front line to be an ally. Not everyone can contribute to any cause equally. Not everyone can contribute to any cause equally. That's the way of our world. Again, we have to be coming back to just remembering we're human. We're only human. Everyone can find some way to contribute. You can still absolutely be an ally without being on that front line. Case in point, being here, being a part of this conversation, this starts to build true allyship and true understanding and true unity. We're not out on that front line. I am not out on that front line for 1,000,001 reasons. And I can only imagine that anything I would say for my reasons would be things that others also have. I'm asthmatic, and my asthma just flares up at random times more often than not when I am not in the best of health and not in the best of a mind space. So I know that just going out into the situation, putting that anxiety on me is already just its own risk of me having an attack. Then I try to put on top of that, there's a pandemic where immunocompromised people are also already at another disadvantage. So I have that bubble on top of it. There's another bubble that I can put into it where me over 10 years ago would have been out on that front line probably before others, because that's a part of how I was when I was younger. I was someone that was absolutely jumping. I'd jump off the ship and start swimming to wherever I got to make something happen and to make a change. An easy case in point of it, when I was in high school, when I was a sophomore in high school, I was in show choir. We were getting ready for a big competition season, and I was also cast as the Artful Dodger in our production of Oliver. What a musical that is. We had a rehearsal for our show choir the week of a competition, and it was not going over very well, and so our director decided to end the rehearsal early. I was so upset and against that judgment, I started screaming and shouting. I threw a complete fit. I started telling the director that he doesn't believe in the heart of the choir and that he doesn't deserve to be our director. This was in front of everyone because I was shouting my head off. He then immediately kicked me out of the show choir. So then I waited until the next morning to officially announce that I was quitting the musical, which was opening in 2 weeks. It would be another 4 years where I was in the middle of college and he was bringing his choir to a choir festival at my college before we saw each other again. And both just met each other with open arms and big smiles, and I couldn't apologize enough for my actions, and he couldn't apologize enough for his actions. And he was so mindful of, you cared about the group. I knew exactly where you were coming from. And it was just a great, learning experience the 4 years later. But I was someone who was, absolutely like, I'm willing to die for anything I believe in, even the show choir getting a proper rehearsal before our first performance. That was me about just music and art. And then that was me also about civil rights and true liberties and fighting on the front line through things through college. I have changed, and I'm not that same person. I'm closer and closer still to getting out to the front line. Someone asked me about joining them today, and I was close to thinking about it, but I knew I wanted to keep this going because I knew that I already wanted to stay true to this part of my cause. And even a part of me wanted to feel a little guilty about not being out there today, but I know I'm still active in this cause. I know I'm not saying like, no, I'm not gonna go, and then I'm just gonna chill and not worry about it at all. I'm contributing, I'm doing something. And if you're doing something, if you're educating yourself, you're doing something. If you're talking to others, you're doing something. If you're speaking out against hate, you're doing something. I'm going to close this way.